My heart is broken. It is. It is the last time that I came to this place, Nim's place, a fellow Twitch streamer and friend. He gave me a bunch of Jaffa cakes. But I have been informed that we will not be doing a food taste test this time. And so there will be no more Jaffa cakes. Instead, what he is having me do is in about an hour, and you won't be able to watch this by the time this comes out, so you're welcome. He will be having me draft ingredients and then attempt to cook something. Not really sure how that's going to go, to be perfectly honest. I am not a gifted culinary artist, as it were, but I am going to be here for a couple of days getting involved in various streams, and so if you want to watch those, then I guess just keep your eyes peeled, stay frosty out there. No, I am also sad about another thing, and that's Crystal Palace, because there is a rule that I believe is a very good rule, right? A rule that says if you have an owner that owns more than one club, those two clubs can't compete in the same European competition. It'd be the same way as you can't have the same owner for two different teams in the Prem, right? Like that's a rule, and basically all leagues have that rule that prevent clubs with the same owner from being in the same league. Apparently Mexico doesn't have that rule because one Mexican team didn't get to go to the Club World Cup because two different Mexican teams won the CONCACAF Champions Cup and then didn't get to go to the Club World Cup, because they both had the same owner. But most leagues, they're going to have that rule. Now, Crystal Palace, their owner is John Textor. Now, he only owns 43% of the club, so I don't know exactly how this works, but I guess he's the primary kind of stakeholder in Crystal Palace. He also owns Lyon. You might remember him from such famous stories as the PSG owner calling him some dumb cowboy or whatever he called him, right? Like this is that guy. He also owns Crystal Palace. And Lyon has qualified for the Europa League just because they're Lyon, right? And just the way they participated in the season. I don't think they won any cups or anything. And so they where they finished, they're going to the Europa League. Freaking congratulations. Well, now, so is Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace has won the FA Cup, obviously, their first ever trophy, which if you're the owner of the club, you gotta be really excited about. Except they kind of fucked it a little bit because it's clear they didn't anticipate this happening. Because now that they've won, they're both in the same European competition. And if the rules are followed, like literally if the rules are followed as of today, Crystal Palace won't be able to play in Europe. Which... I'm heartbroken about that. Part of the beauty of the FA Cup is it gives every team in England an opportunity, if they can somehow win it, to play in Europe. And for a team like Crystal Palace that has existed in a 9-point range for like a decade, this is their magic moment where they get to go to Europe and have European away days and do this and that. And you're a cold, dead person inside if you're not happy for Crystal Palace. You are. You're a cold, dead person inside if you're not happy for Crystal Palace. You have to be. You're a ghost. Maybe this is how we can identify the aliens that live among us, because they're the ones that aren't happy for Crystal Palace. And this, even though I love the rule, would suck. And the person I'm going to blame for this is John Textor, actually, because it is possible to get around these rules. It's not that hard. Manchester City did it. They own Girona, who managed to qualify, and obviously they were able to play, right? So the Girona they divested whatever they needed to legally from the team. They're still functionally the owner, but they gave up enough, and legally they didn't run the team. They got all the paperwork done, basically, so that Girona and Manchester City could both play in the Champions League. Then you have Nottingham Forest. And Olympiacos, Marinakis, the owner, he owns Olympiacos, he owns Nottingham Forest. As the season was coming to an end and it became clear that Nottingham Forest was getting into European competition, Marinakis sold off some shares. This made news. I saw the story. He thought ahead. He realized what was happening. He sold off his shares and he was able to, create whatever environment he needed to create where he wasn't technically the primary owner of the club, even though somebody like Evangelos Marinakis is never going to give up primary ownership of a Premier League team. He definitely is still calling some shots, but legally, he's not calling enough of them for UEFA to come in. right? Is it a little stupid that you can get around the rule that way? Yes. Do I think that you should only be allowed to own one top flight club in Europe? Maybe. It's a tough rule to enforce with promotion and relegation. What, a team gets promoted and all of a sudden you can't own them anymore? Like, where do you draw the line? And obviously UEFA's decided to draw the line with European competition, but it's clear there's loopholes you can drive a truck through, because Manchester City and Evangelos Marinakis, and I'm sure other people I don't remember or know about, have driven that Mack truck through that hole. Right? They've right through. No fucking problem. So then what's John Textor doing? If I'm watching Crystal Palace get to the FA Cup semi-final, I'm drawing up the paperwork, especially if they're in the final. You got to figure this out. Now, he does only own 43% of the club, so there is apparently a chance that Crystal Palace will be able to play in Europe. This is the Sun. Obviously, wouldn't be my first choice for somebody to reference here, but this is these are the people that wrote an article on it. UEFA rules prevent the two clubs and everything. Now, the reason it's Crystal Palace and not Lyon, by the way, and they point this out, is Crystal Palace finished lower in the league. That's what UEFA uses to determine which team to disqualify. So because Lyon was higher in the league, they get to go. There's no question about Lyon going, and Crystal Palace is the one that's kind of on the line. Now, initially, they also point out another logistical thing. You would think that Crystal Palace would be able to drop down to the Conference League. The problem is John Textor also owns a club called Brøndby in Denmark. Right? They point that out right here. Now, Brøndby finished higher in the league, so Crystal Palace would then not be able to go into the Conference League either. They would drop completely out of Europe, which is what I said earlier, but that's why. They wouldn't just drop down one, they'd drop all the way out. Right? And this would put Brighton in the Conference League. This would bump teams up. This would put Brighton in the Conference League and bump the team in the Conference League spot up to the Europa League spot in the Premier League. So there's a lot of weird knock-on effects that go into this. Now, like I said, they're appealing this, and they believe they have a pretty decent chance. The Eagles are confident they have a strong case. The result is not expected for around 2 weeks. Right. While Textor owns 43% of the club, he has just 25% of the voting share, the same as the other shareholders. Yeah, I mean, why would they be banned then? I don't really, if that's true, why would they be banned? Because as I understood it, Marinakis was basically just making sure he didn't own 50% or over 50% of Nottingham Forest. An individual holding the majority of the shareholders' voting rights at both clubs is against UEFA's rules. So he doesn't have a majority. They might actually be fine. I just knew the 43%, and I thought there needed to be another owner that could match that. But at 25%, he has 25% of the voting share. He could be okay. While Textor has operational control at Lyon, chairman Steve Parish runs day to day. So what I heard before is that what they're trying to do is make sure that they make it clear that Steve Parish is actually running the club and it's not just the owner, right? But the reason I'm on this article is the one thing I saw in it before we cracked it open again, and that's they point out why John Textor is kind of screwed here. Because while he can go about proving that the clubs don't do business together, that he only has 25% of the voting shares or whatever, that this Parish guy's running the day-to-day, he can't do what Marinakis did, what United and apparently also Manchester United have done, which is to place the shares in some sort of blind trust that somebody else controls, right? A trust that they just don't have eyes on, right? To get rid of the shares, make sure somebody else is watching over them so that they can't have their clubs banned, because then that is honored by UEFA. But it's too late for Textor to use the option of a blind trust, with rules dictating the move should have been made by March this year to satisfy UEFA. So this really, if you're a Crystal Palace fan and you're frustrated, and particularly if for whatever reason UEFA can't, have their heart grow 3 times the size, right? The Grinch style, and give Crystal Palace this European spot that they miraculously earned, the person to blame is John Textor, because in March he should have been putting this in a blind trust. I realized thinking, we're going to win the FA Cup's a little crazy, but if you already have only 25% of the voting share, Marinakis was at more than that, right? These other people that own these other clubs were at more than that, and they were able to solve this problem. As far as I understand it, you can put systems in place to get those shares back out of a blind trust, right, at some point. If for whatever reason you don't win the FA Cup, you can regain that kind of control and stay the leader of the club. So this was just a miss. And that sort of miss might cost Crystal Palace the European experience. And that's sad. And that kind of sucks. And I wish that they had been paying attention, because I really want this to happen. I really do. Now, I'm kind of nervous to end this, though, because I am going to have to go upstairs and draft food and then cook something, which is just not something that I'm looking forward to at all. If you have any ideas about what I should draft or cook, apparently there's some like curveball ingredients in there that I'm a little scared about. So let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's just let's end this video. Crystal Palace, please be in Europe.